Hello, my name is Ian Martinez. Um, Thank you for watching this. This is going to be my reading reflection, narrated by myself, part of English 1301 22 Fall 2025. How did you question an author's idea or opinion? When working on my journals, admittedly, I was working in a frantic environment. Therefore, my answers usually came from a critical state of mind, but it was a perspective I was unaccustomed to. So, in a way, it was surprising to me that I could find myself so harshly criticizing of someone's work. Utilization of such a perspective will hopefully allow me to channel that level of detailed, critical focus into my writings. Which reading or activity made you think harder or see something differently? When reading Mike Bunn's passage, How to Read Like a Writer, the topic of an introspective reading style was expanded on in his translation of Understanding. I can pretty much say with confidence that Bunn's perspective was way more passionate and in-depth than I initially was able to provide for my own readings. With this fresh perspective, stepping into the shoes of the passage writer is something I can do now with with definitely more consideration. What helped you decide if a source was trustworthy or useful? Regrettably, I can't truly recall in which passage the topic of researching a writer came from. It was probably Bunn's, but I can definitely say the conversation of a writer's credibility came up somewhere. Where they went to school, what they've done before or while writing their provided passages, and the normal sort of background information that would provide useful regarding the text. When given the time, it has become almost a detective-like skill to utilize when questioning how legit writers are. What choices did you make with words, visuals, or design to get your point across? Personally, I have only had the time to use my words to convey my true feelings as professionally and appropriately as possible while retaining my original voice and opinions. I am not at all the creative kind of person, as much as I'd like to be. Visuals and designs are clearly not my strong suit. I do believe that despite my creative shortcomings, my writing has at least proved to be entertaining or engaging to some extent. What's different about how you communicate now compared to the start of the semester? I do not consistently communicate with my classmates enough to give a definite answer, but I'm sure at the very least I can get my point across. My school and my work schedule, double C there, has for sure made an impact on my social battery. For my work, however, I believe that my writing skills and ability to communicate my mood has improved, since I haven't had the need to write like this in my regular day-to-day life. Which project shows your best communication, clear, creative, or well organized? I highly doubt I can use this as my best communication, but I'd wager that my annotated bibliography plus critical introduction assignment had the most substance as far as personal anecdotes and opinions. It provided my embarrassingly raw and unfiltered opinions on the material given. I would use that assignment as a valuable reference going forth on how my writing style has changed. What's one strength you bring to group work? In my group, I wouldn't be so crass as to suggest I did anything better than anyone else in my group. But, and I make this claim very delicately, I did, I'd say I did my fair part in speaking in the beginning of the semester, as well as establishing a healthy relationship amongst my group members. What's one thing you've learned about yourself from teamwork? From my time with my group, I can't personally recall group work we did out of class, other than the occasional pointer we gave each other with our assignments. But despite that, I'd say our in-class assignments have taught me that I'm pretty decent at filling people in on what they missed out on. How did working with classmates help you improve your work or ideas? To be honest, I cannot confidently say that we were able to give as much help as we could in light of our own personal out of school dilemmas. But as mentioned before, at least we were, at least we, at the very least, we were able to give pointers to those who were absent or lost in their work. When peers or authors disagreed with your view, how did that influence or challenge your thinking? I did my best to stick to my own opinions at times, but I cannot argue with logical or more in-depth thinking. I didn't disagree with my peers at all, bold as it is to say, but some of the passages we were assigned, definitely challenged my point of view, my view of introspection, or what it means to look deeper into our reading material, which expanded upon my pre-existing ability to do so. How did you decide what was the most fair, honest, or responsible choice in your work? As much as I wish this question had more elaboration, I simply don't have the time to choose another question to answer, or the time to wait for a response as to what this really means. I'm gonna hold my tongue there. From my skewered understanding, responsible choices, if I had to pick one, were most certainly weighed by which approach, if any given, would be the quickest and most efficient options for the time I had to work on assignments or projects. Which values guided your decision when you faced a tough choice? For example, how to use a source, represent an idea, or collaborate ethically. When writing, my toughest choice by far is always going to be speak my mind with a topic in mind or write what the professor is expecting to hear. It's a conflict to be sure, but I've come to realize if I was going to write in the latter style, that being what the professor is expecting to hear, I might as well use AI and touch up on it to make it seem like it's personal, more personal. But I've decided to run the risk of sounding unprofessional but honest rather than correct and robotic, which I beg to say is the far more ethical choice anyways. Writing and reading process. Let's see. How did your writing or reading process change or improve as you worked through different assignments? The first thing that I've noticed going forward in this class was how unprofessional by my own standards my writing started to sound over time. And the reason I say that is because, for one, I haven't wrote so much for a class in a while, and secondly, haven't been given the instruction to write in your own words or been emphasized the importance of personal originality. It feels childish or dramatic to say that I've essentially broken out of the mold when it comes to writing for this class. Writing for me has become strangely more personal, and I have my professor to thank for that. Even though I can't say I'm writing without a certain level of haste, I do believe it feels more natural to write in this style. How did you decide which feedback to use and which to ignore? I've learned more about being receptive to feedback rather than ignoring what might cause me to do more work for little to no payoff. But of the feedback I have received, which frankly wasn't too much, I believe I was able to use more rather than ignore, due in part to the fact that I am not in the position to be turning down any level of feedback or criticism. How do you think about your audience or purpose when writing or designing your project? I was never in too critical of a position to consider my audience too much, but my purpose always had to hit a certain mark to assure I'm not going off topic. Had I the luxury of time, this would be something I'd heavily review. But given my current position, for some consistent reason, wow, but given my current and for some reason consistent position, I leave it to my gut feeling and better conscience when writing my work. What question or problem pushed you to start researching your topic? Journal entries and the bibliography put me in a constant position of checking my sources and looking back to check what exactly each of the authors had stated before making my opinion and entries on their work. This kind of research, as much as a drag as it was at the time, helped me make more accurate and constant assumptions of my work.